Tune into the Green and Growing program on Eagle Community Television with Holly Dickman, Ellis County Horticulture Agent. Holly will identify common lawn and garden issues and provide up-to-date information weekdays at noon and 9 p.m. on Channel 14. Green and Growing. Brought to you by Eagle Community Television and Riedel's Garden Center, a full-service garden center west of Hayes on Highway 40 next to the Bickle-Schmidt Sports Complex.
Spring and fall are both great times to plant trees, but fall is actually the ideal time because we're coming into some cooler weather versus hot weather of spring and summer. And so this is the time of year, if you have some trees in your landscape that are looking a little rough from years of drought, you might consider replacing them or starting some new trees in your landscape to get them started before you ultimately have to remove some of those larger stressed or declining trees. When you go to plant a tree, I guess first of all, before you plant the tree, you want to decide what kind of tree you want. And we do have lists of recommended trees for this part of the state. Unfortunately, we can grow things in eastern Kansas that do not do well here, and so you want to make sure that you're purchasing a tree that actually will thrive in this environment. As we know, the weather can be very fluctuating as far as temperatures and drought versus moisture, and so you need to make sure you have trees that are adapted to that environment for our area here. Now, when you go to plant your tree, one of the biggest tips is to make sure you dig a decent size hole. So you want to make sure that that hole is at least 2 to 3 times as wide as the root ball or container that you have purchased, but you want to make sure that it's only as deep as that root system. And so that's the biggest hint I want to make sure that people understand. You want to or the area where the tree trunk and the root system meet, so right where it kind of flares out naturally, that needs to be right at the surface of the soil. That area is critical for oxygen exchange, and so if it gets buried, or if your tree looks like a telephone pole stuck in the ground when you're done planting, that actually can be a detriment to the health of the tree, and in the long run can slow the tree's growth down or even kill the tree eventually in the long run. So you want to make sure that that hole is nice and wide but not very deep. That's the biggest hint to have good success. The other thing with tree planting is, in our area here, staking is required. You know, we say staking is required anywhere there's wind. We all know that the wind does blow in Kansas, so you want to make sure and stake a new young tree. Now, this tree's been in the ground for quite a while, so it doesn't have a stake anymore, but if you go to stake that tree, the goal is to make sure that root system doesn't move. The top of the tree can move in the wind. That's actually a good thing, and that's good for the tree to do, but you want to make sure that root system doesn't move. So when you stake the tree, stake it down low on the trunk, leave it there for at least a year, and make sure that that root system has completely rooted in before you remove that stake. The other thing to mention is mulch. Once you get that tree planted, it is recommended to apply some organic mulch around the base. At least 2 to 4 inches of wood chips or cedar mulch or any type of organic mulch that will break down over time will help insulate the soil, keep it warm longer during the fall and winter so those roots have a chance to grow a little bit longer. Also hold the moisture in and keep the weed competition down. So mulch is really beneficial to a new tree planting. Finally, watering. You want to make sure and water that tree nice and deeply, but then allow it to dry out some before you water again. So if you know the weather's staying quite warm or it's windy, once a week is generally good enough for one of those trees, a newly planted tree, if you're getting it soaked nice and deeply. As the weather cools down through the fall, you might stretch that out to every 2 weeks or every 3 weeks. But even going into Thanksgiving time, Christmas time, the ground's not frozen. Soak that tree one last time before we get into those really cold winter months to give it some moisture if we've had no snow or rain. If you have questions about planting trees or what types of trees might grow well here in our area of the state, contact your local extension office for more information. Reporting for K-State Research and Extension, Eagle TV, I'm Holly Dickman, Ellis County Horticulture Extension Agent.
Tune into the Green and Growing program on Eagle Community Television with Holly Dickman, Ellis County Horticulture Agent. Holly will identify common lawn and garden issues and provide up-to-date information weekdays at noon and 9 p.m. on Channel 14. Green and Growing. Brought to you by Eagle Community Television and Riedel's Garden Center, a full-service garden center west of Hayes on Highway 40 next to the Bickle-Schmidt Sports Complex.